Good evening. Welcome to May convening of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Steering Committee. My name is Jason DeRozier. I'm the Senior Planner for Housing and Public Engagement at Old Colony Planning Council and Project Lead on the Whitman Open Space and Recreation Plan. Just go around the table and introduce yourselves.
Laurie Muncy, Old Colony Planning Council, Comprehensive Planning and Sustainability Director. I work with Jason on all his projects. I'm here to help.
All right. I'm Leanne McKenzie, member of the Conservation Commission.
Ed Winnett, Conservation Commission.
Kathy Keefe, Assistant Town Administrator.
Brandon Griffin, Planning Board.
Thank you. So we're just going to review some of the old business before getting into the goals of this month's meeting. Is really on sort of identifying goals and activities or strategies for the updated open space and recreation plan. So the chapters that have been drafted are going through the process of being finalized. Community setting, or section 3, is pretty much done. The inventory of lands of conservation and recreation interests, which is section 5, is going through a process which I will talk about in a little bit, but that's moving towards completion, and probably will be close to final draft towards the end of June. There's some, ownership questions when it comes to a couple of the parcels that we're working out internally, so that we make sure that we have the correct owners of these particular parcels when the plan is finalized. And then Community Vision Section 6 is also close to being finalized. That will sort of be updated ongoing because it includes pieces on the overall process, and we won't have all of those details until the public engagement process ends, which will be towards the end of the summer. Next is public engagement schedule for the spring and summer. So I've been able to meet now with the historical commission. I met with them earlier in May. Actually, I met with them in April. Sorry, I met with them at their meeting in April. They're reviewing sections 3 and 4 because those have components that relate to sort of like historical preservation and sort of like historical context in town. So I gave them until the end of May to provide comments. So I'll be checking in with them in a week or two to get any comments that might have. And then I will continue to schedule meetings and discussions with the respective boards and commissions as the project comes along. I'm also looking at doing, as I mentioned at our last meeting in March, a series of public engagement convenings to continue to get public engagement and involvement in the plan. Initially, I had discussed, or we had brainstormed during our last meeting, to maybe have some sort of event at the Park Ave school site to reimagine what that could look like. After emailing Justin Evans to sort of get a sense on what process I need to go through in order to host an event on site, because it's not DPW, it seemed like it was Selectmen, so
Yes.
emailed him, and he indicated to me that it might be best to sort of hold off on doing anything at that site because the select board is sort of talking internally around sort of that, and so I don't want to step on anyone's toes or make processes more difficult unnecessarily. So
Right.
I will leave the process of determining what best to do with the Park Ave school to the select board.
Perfect, and I can just tell you that they are in communication with town council on the topic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. But it was good that was sort of identified.
Agreed. Yeah.
Discussed both in terms of this group as well as it came up a lot in the survey, responses of the survey. So OCPC officially has a table at Whitman Day in the park on June 14th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I am planning to be there for the day. If anyone is interested and or available to sort of like partner or coordinate with me to sort of like pop in and out, you don't have to stay the whole day. I get paid for being there. So if anyone's interested in sort of joining me, that'd be great.
Sure.
Have refreshments or something. But the plan is to have at least one map, if not 2 maps, so that community members can identify. So there were a number of things that came out of the survey in terms of recommendations. One of them was a dog park. and a dedicated dog park outside of the town park. Maybe fenced in, a dedicated space for dogs, and then the off leash and all that. The second recommendation of this priority that was identified by survey respondents was skate park. And so the goal is to have a map and have community members sort of identify what would be the perfect sites for those, and sort of have them sort of like indicate where those sites could be on a map. So that's at least one activity I'm sort of thinking about how to sort of get public engagement on the other piece now that the Park Ave school is out. Really thinking about how to sort of like identify some of these spaces.
I was going to ask some of the walks that we've done. When you're saying the public's going to hopefully identify, are you going to provide like here's town land that's available? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to say like I want a dog
Just
park
pick
here and
something,
have it
yeah.
be in someone's backyard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then that would be based a little bit on some of the walks that we're doing as well too.
Mhm.
What's usable and what isn't usable.
Yeah, so once we have a better idea of Section 5,
Yeah.
and have that somewhat cleared up,
Yeah.
we'll be able to sort of highlight what those town-owned parcels are,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
we can work out in terms of like taking out the ones that don't make sense,
Yeah.
like Town Park,
Okay.
Pete Hole, like those ones
Right.
for example,
Yeah.
don't make sense. They're town-owned, but they're not good sites for a dog park, for example,
Yeah.
or a skate park, and so we can take those out and sort of like have like other ones for people to sort of
Cool.
think about. And then there's a public meeting following up on the one we hosted at the library in last October, July 17th at 6 p.m. This will be towards the midpoint of the summer, after Whitman Day in the Park, after a majority of what's the word I'm looking for? Chapters have been drafted and somewhat finalized, to get a sense, to share with the public what our sort of identified goals and strategies are, to get feedback on those. And then towards the end of the year, there will be, maybe in the fall, a public review / comment period on the OSRP chapters or completed plan, depending on where we are. Per the contract, we have until the end of December to get everything done and sent to the state. Through experiencing other folks going through this process, there's usually comments and feedback from the state. So there's some revision that's needed. And so I want to make sure that we build that into the timeline. So my plan is to submit the plan by October, late October, early November, so that we have a little bit of time to work out any sort of like feedback or revisions that are needed, so that the Whitman open space plan can sort of be approved in the original time period without having to delay.
Are there any other chapters that need to be drafted?
Yes. So that's further down, but I think, getting to that now, I'm going to skip into new business, update on OSRP drafting. So narrative for Section 5. So the tables are close to being done with some revisions or reworking of the tables, particularly in terms of ownership. There's some narrative that goes along with that, so I'm working on that narrative now. I've decided to hold off on continuing on that narrative until the tables are completed, because something could move from one place in the table to another, and I would have to update that in the narrative anyway. So that's in process. Sections 1, which are the plan summary, so the executive summary of sorts of the plan, and Section 2, which is the introduction, are currently being drafted. Because it's an executive summary and an introduction, those also are somewhat written last, because you sort of summarize the overall process. Right. And so I've sort of drafted out as much as I can at this time. And then over the next couple of months, we'll continue working on that. Section 7, which is analysis of needs. Section 8, which is goals and objectives. And Section 9, which is the 10-year action plan, will be started soon. I have to wait until we talk about goals and objectives before I can write the goals and objectives section. The 10-year action plan comes after sort of everything else has been largely written. And then Section 7, the analysis of needs, sort of ties in with the state's SCORP, and I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for, but it's the state's open space plan.
Comprehensive Open Space and Recreation Plan.
Right. So the state has an open plan, and so you kind of have to read the state sort of priorities and sort of work
Sure.
at which ones sort of relate to the town. I haven't had time to sort of read the state plan yet, so that one is in process as well. As it relates to the open space plan, the Division of Conservation Services, or DCS, which is the state department that's sort of you turn these plans into, updated their OSRP workbook, which changes some of the components of the open space and recreation plan. So there's a climate change section, which was not required before. There used to be sort of a much more detailed analysis of zoning, which is no longer required. It's only zoning that impacts open space and recreation. And there's some other sort of tweaks here and there throughout the workbook, but we're, I think, further along, so we don't have to make a lot of those revisions. And so I will add the climate change piece, which is not currently included in Section 4. That's easy enough. And then the ADA assessments are no longer required. So if you remember, towards the end of last year, or at some point last year, Ryan, myself, Leanne, we went around and did the ADA assessments of Town Park,
Thank you
Hobart,
for that.
and all of those other sites. Those are no longer required because we did them.
Of course.
Because we did them, and essentially the town paid for them. We're still going to.
Yeah.
Of course. Oh, fair. Sure.
So, but they're no longer required. So,
Did Bruce Martin ever catch up with you on that
yes,
venture? Excellent.
yes, he
Okay.
joined us for the town.
Okay.
Park.
Yeah.
Oh, and the 10-year thing.
Yes. So originally, the action plan was a 7-year action plan.
Okay.
So you had to update your open space plans every 7 years.
Yes.
It's now 10 years.
Right. Nice.
So that changes in terms of the schedule and provides additional flexibility to make sure you're able to achieve all of the goals and objectives you want to over a more spread out time period. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about these Wednesday walks that we sort of identified at our last meeting in March. We've done 3 so far. I think they've been pretty enjoyable. I've been joined by Ed, Leanne, and Ryan on most of them. Ryan wasn't able to make today's walk at Town Park. He was traveling. But open it up to Ed and then Leanne to sort of give their experience doing these walks. So on April 30th, we did Pete Hole. We did Flaherty Trail last Wednesday, and earlier today, we did the Town Park.
So Pete's Hole is an old haunt of mine because there's a little pond in the back. I used to go duck hunting there. And when we actually went, we had a hard time finding the entrance.
Yes.
And, there's now a house there. So we talked to the owner who was out in the driveway.
And remind me, is this off Pine? Where are we?
Pine Street,
So
yeah.
Pine Street on the Route 18 end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yep. So we talked to the owner who was out in the driveway wondering what we were doing.
Sure. Yes, yes.
And he gave us permission to go to the trailhead. But it's a right of way anyways for the town. And I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but it's a trailhead. So there is access to his property. And so we went in and I think what we determined overall is it's pretty wet and it's not really accessible. So the thought was not all land needs to be developed for open space. Let's leave some for the wildlife and for other activities that are occurring. So I think at the end of the day,
Sounds like this is a good candidate for just that.
just leave it.
Yeah,
alone.
it's conservation preservation because even though it's accessible, I would not want the town to sort of promote walking through someone's yard to get to a space, because it looked like previously before that house was developed, it looked like it might have been more of an open sort of access area, and so, but now that it's in someone's yard and it looks like, you know, he's done a lot of work on his grass. You don't want a lot of people sort of trampling through to get.
We suggested that maybe he have people mow it when they go through, but
Right. Yeah. Right. $5 a
And then looking at the sort of the network, the sort of the entry trail, it would be maybe not a fiscally responsible decision to sort of try to make another access point off of his property, just because of the way that it's sort of the trail's laid out.
Okay.
So that one is largely going to be identified as sort of just conservation.
Live and let live. Yep.
Yeah.
Flaherty Trail is next. Anyone want to sort of give a debrief on that Flaherty Trail?
I'd like to start out. Where is it?
It's a surprise. It's on Auburn
It's
Street.
on Auburn Street. Surprise. Down on, gosh, what's the road?
It's right before the Washington Auburn intersection. So
Yes.
if you're driving up Route 14 Auburn Street
Okay.
towards Washington Street with the blinking light, right before you get up to the top of the hill, there's a trail.
What's the
sign.
landmine? Do we have a
There is a
Landmark? There's
Yeah.
sort of like
Oh,
the
my.
cow field across the street.
Yeah, there's some folks across the street who have cows and maybe horses at their home.
Oh,
There is actually a large sign. It sometimes gets overgrown.
And if you're driving, you unless you're
wouldn't.
looking for it,
Yeah.
you would see.
Yep.
But it's quick when you turn on Auburn off of Washington.
Yeah.
It's maybe 100 feet on the left hand side.
Mhm.
So next time you go, just go slow and look. And you'll be
okay.
like,
All
"What?"
right.
Yeah.
All right.
And we recommend you go because we had a great time.
And what does the sign say?
Donald Flaherty Trail.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I took a picture of it to
Oh.
include it in the open space plan.
Good.
To prove that it's there.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Now that we know where it was, how was it?
It was great. Yep. So it's just under a mile. It's an in and out trail right now. It's very well marked, very clear. Some beautiful views there. There is a bench along the way as well. So great opportunities for bird watching. Ryan had his daughter with us that day, and so it was kid friendly as well. Trying to think if there's anything really else, but it's good. We had a great time out there.
Yeah, I think, in doing the walk, and I'll have to wait until I can get a colleague of mine to join me with a drone to sort of get an
Oh.
aerial perspective,
Good
because
thinking. Yep.
it does go in quite a way, and there is opportunity, I believe, at this point, without actually knowing for sure with an aerial view, that there could be potential to sort of extend the trail, maybe somewhat into East Bridgewater, because I know East Bridgewater is interested in sort of connecting a trail that they have into into Whitman. So we'll need some aerial footage of that to determine where we could make those trail extensions or expansions. Also, we came along sort of an additional spur in the trail, and so we decided to follow that, which is an additional sort of offshoot trail, which came out to, I got a picture of this also, but to what seemed to be a makeshift campground, where someone
yeah.
had like
Sure.
pallet seat or something,
Yep.
and an open fire
Sure.
Yeah, so that's
fire pit.
Sure.
concern.
And so
Yep.
it could be worthwhile to sort of invest some, I don't know, CPA funds and sort of like, a gazebo or some sort of like not programming, but some public realm improvements in that part of the trail to try to sort of mitigate any potential sort of
Yep.
I don't know, unsavory behavior, at least is sort of like having open fires in the middle of the woods
Yeah,
where
just the fire risk alone. Yeah,
where
it's
the
just-
risks are.
it's-
Just because if people know that the town is sort of investing resources there, they may be less likely to sort of do
Right.
that kind of behavior.
Right.
The interesting piece about that is you would expect it to be littered, but they actually had a trash barrel.
Yes, it was very clean.
So it was
Yeah, they brought their own
Well,
trash barrel.
They
in.
did.
Yes.
Wow.
That's what
With
the
trash
whole trail
bags.
is
Yeah.
extremely clean.
Well-
Yeah.
Dang.
And then at the end of the trail, the other thing we talked about, if we can't extend it into East Bridgewater, the thought was that maybe it could go up towards Butternut. And so I talked to the assessor as well about potentially there's land there that's owned, but it's not currently under use.
Is it vacant?
It's part of a larger lot,
Okay.
but there might be an opportunity there to get a conservation easement where, the end of the trail, now you can come through all the way through instead of walking down and back.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that sort of turns out and see how East Bridgewater turns
Yeah.
out as well.
And then I had a thought, but now I forgot. Oh, in terms of access, so there's some parking maybe on the street because it's a town road. I walked there just because I know that parking would be tough. But there is space depending on how you want to utilize it. The sign is sort of set a little bit back from the street, and the trail is set a little bit further back from the street, and there's some like large boulders, so you can't like drive into
Right.
the trail. There could be a potential to sort of like move the sign a little bit if that's what the town wanted to do, and maybe do, I don't know, two sort of like off-street pull-off spots, similar to what is over at Hobart Pond in terms of like the pull-off and sort of
Yep,
parking
right.
there. But not sure if you want to sort of use that space as parking. There is on-street parking, but whether or not people feel comfortable parking in front of someone's house and
Right.
right on Route 14, that's
Right.
Yeah,
but that would
right,
have
yeah.
to be sort of
Just-
determined.
That's one reason why maybe the butternut
That's
and
right, yeah.
or the East Bridgewater end might
Yep.
work better because trying to back out of there,
Oh
Yep.
my goodness!
On
Yeah,
Auburn
especially
Street,
with the intersection right there. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, might
Yep.
be a little bit of a
could
challenge.
cause some problems.
But seriously, I think those of us that went
Mm-hmm.
go because
Yeah,
I
definitely.
never knew about it.
Yeah.
And
Right.
It's absolutely
Huh?
Oh, yeah,
beautiful.
happy to hear that.
Yeah, a lot of people
Never
feel
knew it
like
existed.
a lot of the people who
Yeah.
filled out the survey where they were like, please rate these sort of like open spaces in town. And it
Yeah.
was like
Wait, what?
Flaherty Trail. People
Yeah.
were like, what's that?
Right.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know that it's there. And so trying to and the bench
So not overgrown or?
No.
not really. No.
No. Yeah.
We saw the bench and we're like, what's this here for? And then we turned around and there was like this big open space with like
Oh,
marshland and
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
pine trees,
Yep.
and it
Yep.
was. I'm going to include that as a scenic vista. in the open
Excellent.
space plan, just because
oh
of
my
That's
goodness,
really
I've got
nice,
to
too.
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last
Yeah.
one was the town park, which we did today.
Well, the forest.
Town forest, sorry, town forest.
It
Let me change that up here.
was,
Yeah.
We're all wearing new clothes
Yeah.
from that walk.
Oh,
We had
you had a change of clothes was in order. Sure.
Quite a
Well, at least
time.
my shirt.
So I grew up on the East End.
Mm-hmm.
Grew up on Cherry Street, and I live on Rainer.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that Whitman had a town forest.
Yeah.
But so we entered on Plymouth Street and went through it. There's a trail, but then the trail kind of gets lost.
Yeah.
So we decided, we have the GIS up, and we decided to just keep going.
Forge.
And see, just keep going, see how far we could go. And
Map if you
we
wanna
got
see.
most of the way, but not all the way to other town-owned land that's kind of beyond that because it got wet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Swampy.
Yeah, swampy, but for the most part, it was pretty dry. There is a brook that runs alongside of it, and we found some interesting features as well too. There's a river that ran in the middle of it,
Yeah.
which we thought was pretty cool because it's a good area to put hiking trails, and putting a bridge over that would
Oh,
really be
cool.
scenic cool.
Yeah.
And then it goes to where it looks like there was an extension of the berries, that neighborhood
Mhm.
that goes through it. So it's nice and clear.
Almost
and-
like a road was going to be built there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we went into the woods a little bit further, and that's where it ended up getting wet. And we were like, all right, too many mosquitoes. And
Yeah.
Everything else,
Ticks
so,
and other things.
yeah, so
Right.
we came back and we decided to follow that road, the clearing out, and it brought us to Green Acres. And,
Green Acres Drive. Yep.
Green
Yes.
Acres,
Yes.
Yep.
near where Clayton's used to be.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was really good. And I think when we talked about it too, it would be a really good area to have a walking trail system that you can come in and out.
Mm-hmm.
A loop.
A loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and there may be a potential. So it's tough on the Plymouth Street side,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
there may be a potential on the Green Acres side.
Right.
There's
Right.
some
In
land
and out of
that's-
the way. Right.
Some land that's not currently occupied
Mm-hmm.
that we'll just need to investigate a little bit further to see if that's something that could get acquired
Mm-hmm.
for conservation.
Yep.
For the open
Hey.
space planning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool.
The only issue with that, again, similar to Flaherty Trail, would be sort of parking, because parking on Plymouth Street
Yeah.
may,
Dangerous.
and that's also a state road, so
Yeah.
that may not be possible. You could essentially park sort of like at the entranceway if that is created over in Greenacre Drive. However, it's kind of a cul-de-sac sort of
It is.
situation, and so
Yep.
maybe not wanting to park sort of like in and amongst sort of that neighborhood. And so the question is, and still remains, is could maybe a partnership or an agreement between the funeral parlor across the street,
Blanchard's.
Yep.
Blanchard's,
Yeah.
from
Mhm.
on the Plymouth Street side, could there be maybe some sort of an agreement that during off-peak hours
Yes.
or off hours, people can park there and sort of like enter on the Plymouth Street side?
Interesting.
That's where we parked. I went in and
Yeah,
asked
yep.
for permission, and they said, "Oh, absolutely."
Yeah.
But overall,
Good
I
work,
think
people.
these walks have been fairly enjoyable.
I'm jealous.
Some of them require us to sort of like walk really fast through briar bushes,
Yeah, right.
which has not been the most enjoyable thing, but getting to walk in the woods is enjoyable, and
Yes,
so
it
it's sort
is.
of like it's fine. We have 2 more planned. So we initially had Hobart Meadow scheduled for June 4th. I'm going to be attending a conference that day, an all-day conference, so I'm not going to be available that day for that one. So I just wanted to reschedule that one now, just so we have the new date with the folks that are here, and I'll just coordinate with Ryan as needed. So I could do Monday, June 2nd, if possible, or the 9th, 10th, 12th, or we could just reschedule for the 18th, which is a Wednesday. It would just be the one after Bear Meadow.
The 9th works for me. I'm up in Maine the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Yep. I'm going to be out of the picture. I'm going back to work, so I'm going to be in an office again. So
Okay.
I feel your pain.
no longer in the woods. Back in
Yeah, from the woods to the desk.
Yeah, seriously.
I'll be thinking of you.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, so June 9th is
Congratulations.
a
Thank
Monday.
you.
So we would have, let me look at my actual work calendar. We would have Hobart Meadow on Monday the 9th, and then we would have the last one, Bear Meadow, on the 11th, 2 days later. Which essentially works for me. All right. So I will update the calendar invite for Hobart Meadow for June 9th.
Sounds good. And I'll talk to Bruce about access to the Hobart side because the fence is up there now.
Okay.
So we'll see what I can get organized.
Great. And so that brings us to the main agenda item for this evening's meeting, which is to really review and narrow down the OSRP goals and identify strategies for each goal. So through previous meetings, we had identified 9 goals essentially for the open space plan. Now, 9 goals seems like a lot. It could be a lot depending on how big the goals are and what sort of action items or strategies you have sort of connected to each goal. Easton updated their open space plan, and I believe they have 16 pages of goals. So 9 goals in itself does not seem like a lot in comparison. However, Easton has like a whole department and multiple departments sort of working on their sort of like goals and objectives for their open space plan. And so it might make sense maybe looking at the Whitman open space plan to sort of like maybe narrow down or consolidate and make these goals more concise and feasible over a 10-year period. So essentially, the first one is protect and improve the natural environment. 2, preserve open space while managing growth. 3, improve accessibility for people with disabilities. 4, align Conservation Commission goals. Create an open space management plans. Number 5, task stakeholders with tracking and reporting progress. 6, promote awareness and passive use of trails and landings. 7, support pedestrian and bike access and greenway connectivity. Number 8, acquire, protect valuable open space assets. And number 9, establish a resource hub for landowners. And so if you look at this other document that I passed out, the first page, front and back, are these goals and a couple of sample strategies connected to each of those goals. It also includes the responsible parties and the timeline. Now, this timeline was initially built out as a 7-year action plan and not 10, so these dates would essentially change over sort of the next 10 years versus the next 7 years. So, for example, goal 3, improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Some strategies or recommendations would be to conduct ADA audits for top sites such as Hobart Pond, Town Park, install paved trails, for example, ramps and accessible seating, and prioritize parking access improvements for the sites that might have parking connected to it. For number 6, promoting awareness and passive use of trails and landings, launch digital trail map and signage project that could be connected to the Flaherty Trail and or town park, specifically the town park because the town park doesn't have any signage. So just some sort of sign. There might also be opportunities because when you access the town park, it feels like you're walking through someone's yard because there's a house right there to
You're
the left.
talking forest.
The
Forest,
Yeah,
sorry. I keep
yeah,
saying
I know you do. That's
the
okay.
town forest.
Yeah.
Maybe doing some sort of like visual barrier so that people know where the trail is or how to access it. And the town could utilize CPA funds, for example, to sort of like create that wall or fence or whatever it ends up being. Something else that could be done is adding kiosks at trailheads and landings, and hosting seasonal events such as nature walks, stargazing, etc.
Love that.
And so for that one, number 6, the responsible parties would be the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee, the DPW, Recreation Department, and IT or GIS staff in terms of like mapping the network and all of that.
Can I ask a process
Sure.
question? So these are great goals too. I love them. In some of these, we've got 2025 to 2027.
Yep.
What does it take in order for us to initiate getting these done? Does the plan need to be approved by the state first, or depending on the groups that are here, can we just take the initiative and make a decision? Yeah, let's
There'd
do
be
it.
nothing to prohibit that, I would
Yeah.
suspect.
You can
So
start
we
whenever
can get
you want.
rolling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But does it need to be presented, for instance, to the selectmen at all?
Depends on what we're doing. It
Yeah.
depends on what we're doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, for the town forest
Yeah.
example, and I will have this process laid out in the open space plan, essentially in section 4 as well as in the recommendations. But it's unclear, and Lori can correct me if I'm wrong because we both sort of attempted to look into it in various aspects. It does not appear that the town forest is actually a town forest and anything other than sort of like local name. And so
It's officially designated.
people refer to it as a town forest.
Sure.
Lori and I have found sort of a deed that indicated that the land that the forest sits on was taken through tax holdings
Yes.
in 1936.
Wow.
And it's not clear that any other action from the town has taken place since then
I'm going
because
to guess not.
I have not been able to find town meeting reports from the 1930s. Obviously, anywhere. That was a question I had for the historical commission.
Yeah. Great.
To see if they could find some sort of like paper trail
Sure.
about the town forest. So the first step before doing anything there would be sort of to have it designated as a town forest, because then you can do sort of the maintenance and upkeep and sort of having it be a
Right.
forest.
Then it's under your purview.
Is that a
Sure.
state filing or something, or
Town meeting too. You have to go to
So-
town meeting to dedicate it.
it'd be a special town meeting?
I wouldn't do it as special. I would wait till your upcoming town meeting and add an article to the
2025.
regular warrant
Right.
Yeah.
and just say we're
Yeah.
going to transfer this to town forest and the care and custody of, and who you determine to be the manager of that property.
So does that mean we would have to wait before doing anything to that space?
I mean, it depends on what you're really going to do. If you're going to go up and throw a sign up, I don't know. I mean, if this town would really care, but I would just be waiting and start with projects that you know that are doable without any drama, and put that on your priority list once it's taken care of the paperwork. Just to know what's
I'm a
bothering
mover and
you.
shaker, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's start with another project and put that on the list to do.
okay,
Reprioritize.
okay, cool.
So these are the goals and strategies that were sort of that I came up with and wanted to sort of offer as discussion
Mhm.
for the open space plan. However, the second page, that's titled Whitman OSRP 7-Year Action Plan 2025 to 2032,
Mhm.
are goals and strategies that were sort of pulled out of the survey. So these are not necessarily the same as the goals and strategies that we all sort of brainstormed and identified. But think, it would be interesting to sort of like maybe pull in some of the goals and or strategies, because there is some overlap between sort of the goals that we identified and some of the strategies ultimately that came out of the survey. So just reviewing those for a minute. So the first goal is protect and improve the natural environment, which again, sort of, I did try to connect these as much as possible to the initial goals. It came up with strategies from the survey. Develop a town-wide invasive species management plan. Restore Hobart Pond, clean water and improve trails. Inventory and prioritize watershed/culvert maintenance. The Duval School culvert came up a couple of times in terms of needing repair or maintenance. And then Simmons Stream.
Duval.
I don't know. Yeah.
I can get you the raw sort of survey responses that attached to that one. And then the Simmons Stream, which I'm not completely sure where that is, but it was mentioned. And then launch a climate resilience education series through workshops and signage just to talk about climate resilience education. Number 2, preserve open space and manage growth. Update zoning bylaws to support open space preservation. LID, which is low impact development, and conservation subdivisions. That essentially could also be incorporated into a master plan. Because it does speak to larger sort of, so that's not, that would be, in addition, a number of these would be connected between the open space plan and a master plan.
Would that one also be the zoning board?
Yes, and that should not say town planner. I did put town planner in a couple of them, forgetting what town I was working on, just because I'm working on some other plans that have town planners.
Yeah.
And so anytime you see town planner, it should be planning board and zoning board. Map and prioritize parcels for protection through CPA funds. Camp Ellis Carlton might be sort of a opportunity in wildlife corridors.
Can I give you an
wildlife
update on
corridors.
that?
Yes.
Yes. So at the annual town meeting, it was voted in the affirmative to consider selling it to the town of Rockland. But there's 9 acres on the Whitman side that are contiguous with the 30 acres that fall under Rockland's jurisdiction. So the thought is the sale to Rockland would be contingent upon them extending their conservation restriction that they currently have on McCarthy Farm and just adding that piece. So then the side on Whitman would want to develop walking trails to connect and hitch up with their walking trails. So that's the thought process there.
So potential homework for you then?
Yes.
Would you mind sort of
No.
just writing that up real quick in an email and sending it to
100%.
me just so I can
100%.
copy and paste into the open space plan?
Yes, you got it.
So we would still have access off of Plymouth Street.
Right. So the access is, so now I've walked that one myself. It's a cart path.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a cart path. But assuming CPA funds could open that up, and there's a little, maybe a couple of parking spots that we could eke into that. And then just connect it. And my understanding, Rockland's idea is to connect it to the Bay Circuit Trail.
That would be so awesome if you guys connected that, and that
That's
would be a
the-
big win of
Then right into Hanson. Yada, yada, yada.
That with his gaps, that's been a huge priority.
Making connections. So
Yeah, and it'll go right on the map and look so pretty.
Right. So anyways, that's where we're going with that. So
be our own Emerald network.
yes.
And just a quick thing on the first point
Yep.
for goal 2.
Yep.
As you said, yeah, I mean, town planner, I don't even think we have one of those. Right?
We don't. We do not. You guys are
That's
our
what's
town
giving me all the
planner.
projects.
Yeah. That's right.
It would be planning board and council.
Oh yeah.
And because the state has to approve all bylaws.
Oh,
Right.
town council.
Yeah.
For anything zoning related, yeah, I'll add those.
I mean, I don't know how hard the state looks at them, but they have to sign it.
Yep.
Do they
That's
actively
some
participate in the modifications, or they just review the draft that you
They
come
review
up
the language.
with at the end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's going to be nothing compared to when the CPC Act had to be sent out way ahead of time because they were backlogged anyway, and they were sending them months after town meetings had approved them, but they weren't even in order. So they had to go. There were a few towns had to go back, have another meeting
Oh, ouch.
because of revised language, and
Yeah.
and thank goodness for Gold Rosen. He helped us avoid.
Yeah,
all-
he's
all of
amazing,
it.
isn't he?
He's the best.
He's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, John Goldrosen. Yep.
So number 3, improve accessibility for people with disabilities. Again, some of these relate to what was previously mentioned on the previous one. ADA audit of all open space and recreation areas. Upgrade priority sites for parking, paths, restrooms, which restrooms came up a number of times, in particular to like Town Park and a couple of other sites, and then signage. Number 4, align Conservation Commission goals with OSRP and improve land management. Some action items here: install adaptive amenities such as benches and shaded rest stops in some of these locations. Develop management plans for Horbuck Pond, Town Forest, the rail trail, which is essentially the Flaherty Trail,
Yep.
and other landings. So that would be sort of like maintenance plans, so that the town forest, if it ends up becoming a forest with trails, that they don't become in the situation that we experienced today, where you're sort of like walking through briar bushes, not knowing where you are. I said at one point during the walk, it sort of feels like Hansel and Gretel.
I was going to say
in terms of,
Gilligan's
like, the way
Island.
that
Yeah.
the trail
Let's get you a
Sort of.
machete.
sort of worked out.
I said that too.
That came up.
Actually, I think anyone who extends the trail or works on a trail has to bring a flamethrower, because a machete is
Yeah.
going to get caught up in some of the.
Just
the
the brush at the very end was.
So create friends of groups for
Ah.
key open space sites. Establish volunteer cleanup crew program. This came up again a couple of times during the survey when I was analyzing the survey's responses in terms of like having cleanup days. When I was in Boston, I fairly regularly organized sort of like Love Your Block sort of
Right.
events where people would go out, we'd get volunteers, and they would sort of like go out and clean up sites. So something like that. Number 5, task stakeholders to track and report progress on the open space plan, so that when the open space plan is updated, you have a list of sort of like what's been accomplished and being able to track that. So establish an open space recreation plan implementation committee. Essentially, it could be members of this group plus a couple of other town members who might be interested. Annual tracking of survey checklists sent to stakeholders in terms of like maintaining progress and sort of engagement on that, and publish OSRP progress report every 3 years, just so that people know sort of like what's been implemented, what's been working. Number 6, promote awareness and passive use of trails and landings. Develop and distribute printed digital trail maps. Install kiosks at trailheads and conservation areas. Host annual Explore Whitman Outdoors Week with events. Install interpretive signage at historical and natural sites. That's also something I think that would interest the historical commission in terms of like having wayfinding and sort of like
Right.
historical and cultural sort of signage in the downtown area. Number 7, improve maintenance, safety, and aesthetics. Prioritize maintenance of key facilities such as Memorial Field and Town Park. Address geese management issues on fields. The geese were probably the most frequently referenced thing in
Yeah.
the plan. When I was driving back home from the town forest today, I did see a pretty large cohort of geese walking along the side of the road towards Memorial Field. And so it does seem like a lot of people don't use some of these spaces because of the geese issue.
Right.
And they all had babies.
Yeah.
I posted a
Tis the
picture.
season. Yeah.
Man, there's a
Yeah.
whole flock coming.
Yeah.
Right.
And then add trash cans, restrooms, lighting, and seating in high use areas.
So number 7 from this is different than number 7.
Yep. Number 8, expand, because I didn't want to make it any more than 9.
Yeah.
We could make it 10 just to be an even number, but for what it's worth. And then number 8, expand recreation for underserved groups. I almost said undeserved groups. Underserved groups. Develop a teen center or teen zone at 168 Whitman Ave. We had questions about what that was at our meeting in March. I did do a drive-through of Whitman Ave, and it's next to the park, I think, to the right of Maple. There's a big white house with a small plastic playground sort of in the front of it.
That's the Head Start.
That's the Head Start.
That's Head Start.
So the question
The
is,
history of that
when-
building.
when Head Start's not in operation, could you have a teen center?
I think they're year round, but there's
Yeah,
also
I
an
think you're right.
issue with Head Start too because
They were defunded.
Yeah, that building.
well,
I don't know.
so the
Something about $1.
correct. So
Yeah.
the town was leasing it for $1,
Yeah.
and of course, in financial difficulties, people were thinking that really wasn't fiscally responsible to only be charging $1.
I'm charging it all.
So there's some issues with that building.
Yeah, that's essentially what the city of Boston leased the grounds of Faneuil for.
No kidding.
And so they're like, yeah. So now they're renegotiating that. Now that that's
Yeah.
In the story,
Yeah.
we
Sure
get
they
that,
are.
I would think.
for
right?
99 years they had a lease for $1.
Wow.
Right. Yep.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yep.
That's a common process. With sort of like sort of lease sort of negotiations for sort of community uses.
Well,
So-
that might actually fall under the category of the Park Ave School
Town to figure it
teen
out.
center, or
So what I'll do then, I'll just cross that one off.
Yeah.
The next one is construct skate park and/or BMX area, which has been discussed numerous times with this group in terms of like. But the question is, where is the best spot for that?
Mhm.
Now that Memorial Field, which was initially the original spot for that, is not available anymore because the sports fields, where that could go.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
on that? So I think it's a great idea. I supported it when we were going to do a skate park before, but is there any type of liability issue with the town?
that's
With-
an excellent question.
You know,
I always wondered that myself, but these towns have them, so they must
Yeah.
go to, under
Can
the
ask-
umbrella
can ask
policy.
Marshfield.
it's
Yeah,
not
what I
like,
might
it's
do-
not like people are signing waivers, though.
Right.
You know what I
Have you
mean?
seen the
So-
Marshfield skate
So if
park?
you got
Well-
a tennis
Awesome.
court
Is
or
it?
any
Yeah,
other.
my
I lived
nephew
in
takes his razor scooter there. Just yeah,
Wow.
it's,
I grew up
it's
in Plymouth.
awesome.
And when I was younger, Plymouth has it's still pretty heavily utilized skate park outside of sort of like the downtown area. When I used it when I was younger, we never had to fill out a waiver on
So
site.
your fear is someone gets hurt and they sue the town.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah.
But I think it's sort of like use at your own risk
We could
sort
probably
of
do
thing.
sign
But
maybe
it's
sign-
easy
I
enough.
would
Yeah, that's
think,
what
you know,
we would have
pretty
to
much.
Plymouth is one of our communities. It's easy enough to sort of reach out to them and see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
I
they
mean,
sort
I
of-
guess
We had
now
a-
I think
We had a
like you said-
tetanus skate park.
Mhm. Yeah,
What's
the
it?
tennis courts.
A tetanus skate
Okay.
park. Remember? It was just rusted ramps.
Oh.
It was where the train station is
Oh.
past Hobart's Pond.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I didn't
It was-
understand the reference.
It was not a good place to get scraped.
I guess it's kind of no different than the park, although that's more active recreation than the park, just walking around the park.
Mhm.
Oh,
Well, the park playground, even.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
same-
true.
same
yeah. If your
situation.
fingers pinched or something.
My
But
So-
goodness, you hurt
Yeah.
yourself.
So I can do a little more research in terms of like liability.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
Installing pickleball courts and create senior walking trails. When I initially started this project, Lori had mentioned pickleball, and I
Yeah.
was like, pickleball's not going to come up in Whitman. It came up numerous times.
Did it? Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the survey, and so
Yeah.
all communities want pickleball courts.
Yeah.
The question is,
Out of
if you
earshot.
have an outdoor pickleball court, how do you mitigate noise if it's not an indoor facility? And then create senior walking trails. Expand programs for adults and seniors, such as yoga and nature walks. Foster community pride and use of public spaces, number 9. Create a town cleanup day and adopt a park program. Launch flower garden or pollinator projects at parks, came up as an idea. And then host seasonal events such as movie nights, concerts, and markets.
That's fun.
So, I know that there's a cultural committee
There is.
for Whitman,
Yeah,
and
they
I
do
know
well.
they organize a summer concert series. But are there other events that could sort of be hosted, whether at the town park or other sort of
I think that's great.
spaces in the community in
Yeah.
terms of like a movie night at Memorial Field, for example?
Right.
I think that one's is the layout is better for a movie night there than the town park. I don't know, food truck sort of
Right.
days, farmers markets
Mhm.
to make these sites more sort of like
Inviting.
active.
Yeah, right.
The one thing on the pollinator projects at the parks, I think if you're thinking about the town park, so there used to be an organization, Friends of the Park.
Yes,
June
there's
O'Leary
June.
used to run,
Correct.
and they really protected it to the Olmsted design.
Yeah.
So is that organization, is that group still?
Well, I want to say June's in her, 8th decade.
Oh yeah, is she still running?
So no,
No.
that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
think that's sort
Yeah,
of,
yeah,
Yeah, when we did the walk of the park,
Fizzled
it
a little bit.
indicated that group is not necessarily active because they're
They've
a
aged
lot
out.
older and they're
Yeah.
sort of aged out, and so
right.
there maybe there's some interest in sort of reinvigorating that and having like
I
a
bet.
Friends of the
Probably.
I
Park.
bet there is.
I
Um,
bet
I mean,
too.
the town's invested a lot in maintaining it at
Yeah.
the Olmsted design.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So making changes like that, I know even on the DPW, when I was on the DPW, changing trees, that all had to go through Friends. There was a
Yep.
collaboration
Yes.
Yeah.
to
Yes.
make sure.
Yeah, and I
that
wouldn't
the
do
design-
anything that would change sort of the character of the park
Yeah.
necessarily. I think
Yeah.
anything that would potentially do that in terms of programming or activities could be held in sort of like Memorial Field, which is flatter. You can kind of set up in a way that
Yeah.
you're not sort of detracting from the historical character of the park, I suppose.
Yeah.
And if you're doing more events and more public engagement, amenities sort of thing in Memorial Field, maybe that will sort of keep the geese away.
Yeah.
Because if more people are in there and more times,
Right.
at
They'll
various
find somewhere
times,
else.
they'll
Yeah.
maybe
So,
find
yep.
something.
Yep. So funny though, topic came up in my office today about we have a community garden.
Mhm.
And my understanding, so it's on town property and it's in the little corner of that piece. And my understanding is that Bruce Martin on social media, I don't know, a while ago said, hey, maybe this would be a good idea. And then the next thing you know, people just did it like without permission.
No
so it's
way.
sort of like an unsanctioned
Oh yeah,
Oh,
community
wow, yeah.
garden, but it's still cool.
The town getting paid for it?
and
I'm
it
thinking
was
no.
free.
Because I know other towns charge a nominal fee.
Do they?
if have
Yeah.
a plot, yeah. And that's Bates Memorial Field.
Oh, who knew?
It's after the Bates family that was in town.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, we probably should put a sign there.
So, yeah, I don't know whether you want to. Yeah, do you know? Are you
Which
familiar
Bates?
with the community garden?
I know people that
Grow?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So do you not want it identified on a plan, or do you? Because if it's in the Homestead Park, is that where it is?
No.
Oh,
This is
okay.
this is right.
I was getting anxious
Yeah,
over
I
here.
know.
No.
It's right
Yeah,
next to
don't worry.
It's right next to the DPW, and it actually used to be a softball field.
Yeah, okay.
That's why it was. I think it was Parker Bates.
Yeah, all right.
Is that what that is?
Yeah,
That's the garden.
that's the community garden. You'll see the
Yeah,
raised
they're
beds.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
So-
I think if you're not charging a nominal fee, you probably should.
Well, I'm thinking. I think again, it was just thrown out there, and then the
That's
next
funny.
thing you know, people just.
made
Oh, I had no idea.
I don't know.
That's so funny.
I don't
just find
know.
it funny
You
where
know,
it
every
is. It looks
question
like it just
brings
dropped out
another
of the
question.
sky.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I did see a
Well,
woman
that
watering
field-
there. This.
And that field used to generate money for the town. When my wife was on the rec committee, it used to be rented, well, at least for the seasons for baseball and
Yeah.
softball.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Huh.
What happened there?
It turned into a community garden.
Okay.
I don't know.
Overnight,
I'm not sure.
someone just went out
Yeah.
and planted. Yeah.
Community garden. I'm trying to think when I first saw it.
Pretty new.
Yeah, it's fairly new, right? I mean, within the last 5 years,
Yeah, probably
definitely.
Yes. I
They-
was-
yeah, like probably the shorter, like 3.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's so funny. I had no idea.
So how do we go about investigating?
So I don't know. That conversation just happened late in the day today, so
Hmm.
I don't know what.
We should look at the parcels, see all the ownership and stuff, and then maybe as a strategy, create a management plan with a fee schedule
Yeah.
to, dictate who uses it and
Yeah.
how that's
Right.
appropriated
No,
as
right.
an asset through the community.
Yeah.
Right.
And just-
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea having
Oh,
it there
yeah.
myself.
No,
Let
it's
Yeah,
people
it's
use it,
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, just
a
to
little bit
confirm,
of this.
that's the best location too, though.
Yeah.
You know, if there's nowhere else that might be better.
Or if you
So-
want another one, you can have more
Yeah.
than one.
Yeah, that's
Right.
true. Yeah.
I had to step out for a second, but I did write down create a management plan with a fee schedule, but I have no idea what it's referencing.
Community
Community
garden.
garden.
And is that the one at Hobart?
Yeah,
Across the street
across
from
the
Hobart.
street.
Yep.
Yeah, and when you talk to the historic commission, so that's, I think it's Parker Bates Memorial Field.
The one that's by the meadow, right? Is that the one,
Right.
the DPW
Mhm.
building, and
Yeah.
then
And then right here, yeah. And it used to be a softball field. but it's
Yeah.
it's Bates Memorial Field.
Okay. Now the question is, because I went through this process when I was in Boston in terms of like there was like a makeshift community garden
That's what this is.
that the community
Unsanctioned, I think.
unsanctioned
Yes.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Then the town or a city comes in and sort of like,
we want to blow up this spot.
well, not only, but then like they were using it for free, but now you require them to pay.
Right.
Is that going to create any sort of
Yeah,
tension?
friction. Yeah.
Everything does in this
depending
town.
It could be discuss and review the opportunity. You don't have
Right.
to do it.
Or
No,
maybe
right.
Just
My
consider
son
it.
does it. And it's
You could
$20.
use it
Yeah.
Yeah.
$20.
Push.
It's not.
at
Right.
farmers market
Mm-hmm. And
because
build
I
on
know Abington, I don't believe has one. East Bridgewater might.
Of what?
A farmers market.
They have a farmers market. Oh, I think so. Halifax does.
Halifax does.
We have maps of all the farmers market
Mhm.
from one of our interns.
But there are some
Oh.
that make a killing. I mean, obviously, Hingham is not a great
Mhm.
example, but it doesn't mean that couldn't be.
You know, I put my conservation hat on a little bit too. The thing I was just thinking is that's awful close to the Shumatasaka River and Hobart's Pond.
Oh,
bet
yeah,
it's-
talk about fertilizers.
Yeah,
Fertilizers.
that's what. Yeah,
So,
So that
maybe
management
that's
plan
not a
would
good
regulate
idea.
that.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, or maybe again, if it's just unsanctioned,
Yeah.
there needs to be some rules around. Which
Yes,
that's
yes.
what-
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, that was the
who's
first I was
paying for
hearing
water and
hearing
Yeah, yeah.
of it, and right, we'll have
So,
to.
so this might be a little bit of a more priority on the conservation
Yeah.
side
I guess we'll have to
Then
go look
for
at
the
it.
open space.
Good
Conservation.
distance.
But again, who's managing that area?
Mm-hmm.
So my initial thoughts is rather than saying like if you have a fee of like I don't know $100 a season or whatever.
20.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
fine.
100's high.
My son pays $20.
Let's say let's say
Yeah.
$20 a season.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was in for a minute. $20 for a season. Rather than maybe saying like you all start off with 20, there's sort of like maybe
5,
a
10,
schedule
15,
that
20.
sort of increases,
Yeah.
and then as people no longer use it, you
Switch out the
switch out
users.
the users.
Yeah.
And you
So you, yeah,
for any new user, it's $20
Right.
versus
yeah, right.
if that's a road you prefer to go down. Something else that I don't think I included in here, but was mentioned numerous times in terms of maybe I don't know, not fundraising, but maybe money making for the town is to do. Someone had mentioned swan boats, something similar to swan boats in Hobart
wow.
Pond. And I'm thinking, maybe like the Whitman goose boats. Not that
Oh my
there is
gosh.
not that they look like geese or anything because you can
love
get a lot of
geese.
those in there. But is there an opportunity to maybe rent kayaks
Like
or have
paddle
like small
boats or-
paddle boats that people could take into the and then people rent them from the town, and that could be a little bit of a revenue source.
Yeah, with a small amount of work at Hobart's, when you pull in,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little landing with very small amount of work. Put some sand down. It could
A
be
ramp.
boat, yeah,
You
a
could
little
easily have a
launch.
launch. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that should be a real quick and easy one. We could have a conversation with the
I
DPW
thought
and
the Boy Scouts were going to do it, but I don't know what happened with
that
that.
ramp. I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah,
that's it. Anyway, yeah, no, but for sure.
because actually there was a guy on a kayak fishing the other day. And I was like,
Mhm.
that's cool.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
cool.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
What's in
I
there for
won't
fish?
take my kayak in that water.
It's
just
stocked.
stock it with rainbow.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who
Worse than
stocks
Ames
it?
Knoll.
The
I was
state.
thinking that too. You
There's
might
no
want to
fish on
close it just a little bit,
Yeah.
just make
Oh,
sure it's not
wow.
a whole eye or something.
So test
Yep.
one.
They stock Hobart. They don't stock Harding, but
Mhm.
Hobart does get some trouble.
Leanne,
Yes.
what's the water quality at Hobart?
Fine.
You can get it
No. Well, we can actually get back to you with some more detailed information because I think Sandy had just forwarded they were going to
Yeah.
take the annual look at it is
Yeah.
coming up, so we can.
Because you want to make sure that it's not whatever.
Yes.
if you
Yeah.
send
No,
me
it's not. It's not a whatever. Yeah.
All
It's
the
not,
burden
yeah.
is downstream. No, I'm just
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fine.
Turning
But
people
Joey
away.
gets the
Yeah.
diseases.
Yeah.
Weymouth Reservoir gets the plastic.
Yeah.
Depends on the geese. You might get a little.
Yeah.
Didn't hear it from me. But
So
you're drinking plastic.
in
that's your
reviewing
reservoir.
these goals and objectives, recommendations, strategies, is anything sort of you look at and you say that's a big undertaking for the next 10 years that should come out immediately? Are there things missing that should be added? Goal 7 that we identified was support pedestrian and bike access and greenway connectivity. On the one that came out of the survey was improve maintenance, safety, and aesthetics, because the initial goal 7 is sort of incorporated into other parts of this. Are 9 goals feasible? Because a lot of them are sort of like short-term, sort of low-impact things, and there's some like bigger ticket items that would take longer. So that provides sort of the open space implementation committee some sure wins over a short period of time to maybe make progress towards some of this bigger stuff. Because if it's all big objectives, it can be sort of like what's what we're looking for. Disappointing or overwhelming if you're not able to sort of make progress on a number of these things,
Right.
and then you get to your 10-year update and you're like, oh, we weren't able to do any of this.
Yeah, right.
And then you sort of like,
Wah,
feel
wah.
dejected,
Yeah.
sort of like have those again be repeated goals for the next 10 years, and are you
Right.
able to complete them over that period of time?
I have something really boring to add.
Sure. I record.
Skate parks and pickleball courts, etc. They're dependent on the tort liabilities, which is a weird type of exemption / automatically responsible type of. It's a weird.
The town is responsible.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We don't want to be responsible.
Right, we don't wanna
For
be-
your pickleball injury.
And then the only other thing I'm picking out, are we talking restrooms or are we talking porta potties?
So that was not really indicated. People just said,
Yeah.
when I'm in the park or I'm in these places,
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable walking into one of the businesses in the center
Right.
to use the bathrooms.
Right.
A lot of them close somewhat early anyway. Like Restoration Coffee, for example, closes at 3.
Yeah.
If you're in the park at 7,
Right.
6, 7, where do you use the restroom? Can
Right.
you come into town hall? Do you want to come into town hall
Right.
to use the bathroom? So that's
Right.
where that came from.
Okay.
Not
right.
saying you have to do anything about
Yeah.
it.
No. I'm just
Um,
thinking that seems,
Plan your
a
town
porta potty, sure.
around
Rest-
your own sort of, needs.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
The only thing that I think about with porta potties is kids may have fun with that.
You're true.
You're tipping
And
it
if
over, it's a
yeah,
mess.
yeah,
but
no, yeah.
They
Yeah.
make self composting
Mm-hmm.
porta
Toilets,
potties,
yeah.
which are self contained, and they're
Mhm.
pretty cool. And they don't smell. That's the other thing once you get into the porta potties. Who's
Sure.
gonna clean them? I mean, you can
No, I know.
rent them monthly, but
Yeah, I know.
but maybe like a self composting one. It's kind of green.
I'm also wondering if there's a potential for ADA grants to make an ADA compliant
Oh.
porta potty
Yeah.
at town park because it's so
Yeah.
used
Right.
that maybe you can get some assistance paying for that kind of stuff if you tie it into.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's actually what they have out at Bear Mountain in the Berkshires. It's ADA. It's flush to the ground. There's handrails. You can bring a wheelchair in there.
Mhm.
It's you
Interesting.
can sleep there.
Yeah, I would
Yeah,
say
yeah.
anything that can't be pushed over and pushed
Tipped,
into the,
yeah.
the pond is
Right.
probably
Oh,
the.
golly. There was
the
a couch
best.
in there.
Yeah, because I did drive
Yeah.
by the time there was a couch that someone had on the side of the road, like
For
for
rubbish
trash,
pickup. Yep.
and some teens sort of like, who I'm sure were sort of just bored,
Yeah.
said, let's throw this into the pond.
Sure.
So anything that's sort of like immovable.
If they had kayaks to steal, it would be easier.
Right, or just boat.
To steal rent. Steal rent.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
They're closed. We're taking it. No one will miss it.
So I appreciate the work that everybody's
Yeah.
put into these goals. For me, they meet SMAC, which is specific, measurable, achievable, and challenging, which is important. I think some of them, though, like the pickleball courts, if we're doing any construction, that'll require the building department too, right? So it may take a little more time.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
Like the
The
pickleballs
courts,
or
any
something
pickleball.
like that. Maybe we got to get building permits or whatever the case may be. It may take a little bit more time.
Mhm.
But I also think there's some low hanging fruit here
Right.
that we could just get done. If we
Right.
get permission to say, hey, let's just do it. Let's
Right.
get together and get a table, get our thoughts out and get it designed and go.
And with the low hanging fruit, if we get like groups of people established and they do things and they see the results, and then that's just going to be
Oh, yeah,
motivational, and
Yeah.
now we can maybe tackle some larger, more intricate. But I mean, keeping things clean, like cleaning out ponds, that's great. That's great. Trails, I love all the trails and the markings of the trails, kiosks. That's shouldn't be hard.
one of the
We could
biggest
have
points
Eagle
of-
Scout maybe
That's right.
projects.
Yeah.
one of the biggest
Lots
points of
opportunities.
feedback is that so in living here, being a resident here, sort of working through this process, it becomes sort of increasingly evident that there's not a lot of opportunities to create new open spaces,
Correct.
recreational spaces
Yeah.
that are sort of active or passive. Because what is there is sort of there, and which is why I think we're focusing majoritively on sort of connections to other places. I think the connection to the Bay Circuit Trail
Yep.
sort of opens up a lot of possibilities for sort of like inter-community sort of connection, which then sort of opens up opportunities in Whitman, right? Because if you're able to sort of walk,
And that's a
The
9-acre piece.
Mhm.
That's
Yes,
no,
yeah.
that's 9 acres.
opening up maybe the town forest in some sense, so that more people use that, right? You're
Yes.
not like creating new spaces,
Right.
but you're making it more accessible,
Yeah.
more sort of welcoming to people. On the open space plan survey, a lot of people indicated that I just lost my train of thought for a second. What were we just talking about?
Pickleball courts.
Pickleball courts,
and,
something else.
No,
Justin
just
is going to have to pay for
we
that
have a
himself.
finite number of open spaces. We're not going to create
Mm-hmm.
any more. We're just going to work with what we have.
Yeah, there was something that was just said though that made me think of that. Sorry.
No, I do that
Waiting.
all the time.
Building
I-
inspector.
I would focus on strategies, and because the goals, you want 5 main goals maybe, but these goals are worded in a way that they can be combined.
Mhm.
But
Yes.
the work is really
Yes.
just strategy. The goal is
Yeah.
just says Whitman is prepared and protected and blah blah blah.
Yeah, we're-
and then these are the strategies that got us there.
Conscientious,
So
right?
maybe if we rank the strategies as to short, medium, and long term,
Mm-hmm.
and then we
Yes.
can take that data and put it into a schematic for you guys to review later,
Thank you.
and even break it down even further.
Mhm.
I think
as
that'd
we
be
go
helpful too,
forward.
because we're going to definitely need to go back to the rest of the Conservation
Mhm.
Commission, because there's a lot here, and it's
Yeah.
just, and everything's great. It sounds awesome. It's just a different approach than the Commission's been able to take, just having limited resources and membership for a long time. So that's going to be a change, but that would be very helpful to pass it on to them as well.
So is it the idea that we would go off of the survey goals?
Maybe
or
a
off the-
combination of
or the
both.
front-
Right.
Or your front page. Or,
No, I mean I think there's opportunities to sort of combine.
I think
and
integrate
there's
them.
there's
Yeah.
a lot of sort of like similarity. They may not be
Yeah.
worded the same
Yeah.
way, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
similarity. So maybe they're sort of condensed and consolidated.
Yeah.
I just sort of like took the approach of also utilizing survey just because people took time to fill out the survey.
No, I
it
think
was somewhat
that's
of a
the
longer
people have
survey and it
spoken.
was a lot of
Yes,
sort of
yeah.
Yes.
good input
Yes.
that was received in terms of like figuring out how to sort of also incorporate that into the
Oh, I
overall
100% agree
goals and
with that.
strategies.
Mm-hmm.
And we can even work on the goals in-house to mirror what your strategies are.
Mhm.
You know, put them where we think they best meet the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
But with the ranking from you guys on how you think you'd be able to complete those,
Mhm.
Right.
that'd be super helpful.
and I
Yeah.
think the other piece too, because there are some low hanging fruit. Let's get some actual dates on there so we can figure out who's going to take ownership to
Mm-hmm.
to drive it
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and get them completed.
Yeah.
And that can be the other sort of part of the public meeting that we have on in
Right.
July in
Yes.
terms of like, do these goals make sense? Do these strategies make sense? Is there anything here you're interested in helping out with? Would
Right.
you join a neighborhood cleanup day or join a Friends of the Park or
Yes.
a Friends of the Town Forest or whatever? Just to get sort of like people's feedback on that also.
Well, we should get a good gauging on Whitman Day.
Mhm.
People
Yeah.
accessing the table to give their 2 cents or.
And you'll have access
Mhm.
to a whole bunch of
Not yet.
people that are on boards that will have their own.
They're
table.
already
Maybe
doing
if I-
that. That's right. I agree with
can
you.
just walk the line.
Right.
Put something in their hand.
Yeah, we could also maybe
Women Days.
rather than having like
Yeah.
a handout because
Paper?
costs and paper and
Yeah.
all of that. I could have maybe a series of boards or flip chart paper
QR codes.
QR
so they can
codes,
Scan to our website.
so that people could scan into some sort of like feedback form to say like
Yes.
please rank your goals or strategies.
Right.
1 day, whatever.
Yeah,
Yes.
that'd be cool.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
That'd be a good idea.
That'd be good
Yeah,
to pass
interactive.
out at Whitman Day because, like I was saying, almost all the boards end up getting themselves a booth.
Mhm.
So you can just put something out on the table, say, this is a thing that's happening. Any ideas? You know?
Yeah, I think that's good too, but I also want to try to figure out how we utilize the people that's there, because while they're there, they're sort of like captive to you, and you can kind of, get input.
Right.
That's exactly what I mean.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
they do it.
Exploiting it.
All right,
Yeah.
they do
Yeah.
it there versus like take something home. You have a QR
Yes.
code to say, please take this quick
Mhm.
survey or whatever.
Oh yeah, have them do
Over
it.
here. Yeah.
While
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe
Maybe swag.
having the board with the QR, like you said.
Yeah.
That'll
Maybe a business
Consultation.
card. I don't know, something
table
like that.
if they have one can have
You can give gift cards.
3 things. What do you like the best? Just
Top three.
really,
Yeah.
really basic.
Rank photos.
Yes.
even.
Mhm.
Yeah, like you said, if you have trinkets,
People love
participate.
swag.
What-
I mean, I have
exactly.
this little tiny
Yeah.
slinky on my desk every day. Every
Ah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
OCP, would it be OCPC? Would it be Whitman Combination Open Space Recreation Planning Committee themed dog bandanas?
I don't know. It depends
Something
on
dog
what you
related. People like
Tell you
dogs.
what,
Have
people
swag that are
love
attached to
free
dogs.
drinks.
People will take it.
Cats,
And
too.
it tied into
cat
dog park.
bandanas.
Right,
Yeah,
that's right.
There you go. Yeah.
Cute little things that
Yeah.
don't cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, we can get quick because what day is this? June 4th?
June 6th.
June
14.
16th.
Oh,
But
okay.
still,
so we got a
but
little bit
yeah,
of
it's a
time,
month.
But
Yeah.
It's a month.
we'd have to get on that with Megan.
And
And
don't
what do you
listen
need
to
for
the
that?
people telling you to worry about the vendors. I brought so many free drinks. I did not care at all. Just said, nope, take them. Like, but the vendors. I'm like, oh, the vendors are over there.
What do you need for support for the July public?
Is that
Uh,
at the library? Do I have
yeah.
that right? Okay.
involvement. Just
By
being there,
this
sort
committee?
of talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being there to talk to people.
Okay.
Answer questions, because there are going to be some questions that I just don't have the understanding or knowledge, particularly around conservation stuff. And so that if someone from the Conservation Commission is there, you have sort of the knowledge and sort of like to answer those questions.
So I'm just thinking too. So our local WHCA TV runs, spotlights.
Mhm.
They interview town employees and different committees. I wonder if we should get our mugs on that or something.
That'd be
Kevin
good.
Tachi.
They call
Yeah, he's
Tashi.
really good.
Kevin
Send him
Tachi.
an email.
Yes.
So I've been referenced to him like I have
Really
6
nice.
projects that I'm managing,
Yeah.
and I think each project someone has said you should. So I
Yeah,
just need
Kevin
a
Tachi.
full day to talk to him about all of the projects.
Yeah.
He'll
Yeah.
just have content for weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got the words to talk to you for the full day too. So
And he'll edit your
I like-
response so
I
you
like
don't
that.
sound like an idiot.
Well,
Trust
you
me,
know
I
what? He really puts you at ease. He's
Yeah.
he's great
good
at what he
interview.
does.
He's a good interviewer.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
he
he
really
is.
is. Yep.
So there's a couple of things I just wanted to raise that I didn't mention. Let me see if I can just find them real quick. Oh, bike racks.
Oh,
That came up in terms of bike racks because people, would like to ride their bikes in and around town, but there's no place to sort of like store it. So you can't ride your bike to the park. There's no bike rack.
right.
And so, in thinking about sort of, I think there's opportunities to install sort of like traditional bike racks at like Town Park, for example. However, in sort of the downtown area and maybe in the park, when I worked in Alston, Brighton, I partnered with Alston Village Main Streets and Brighton Main Streets to do a series of like historical bike racks. In both Alston Village, sort of like Cambridge Street and Brighton Ave in Alston, if anyone's familiar with that neighborhood, and Washington Street in Brighton down towards Oak Square. And we worked with Artists for Humanity, which was in South Boston, high school students learning visual and technical arts. They prefabricated steel bike racks
Wow.
and painted them. So in Alston, there was one of a spray paint can that spelled out Alston to sort of highlight sort of the artists community in Alston. There was one of a bicycle gear shift. There was a
Cool.
steer head for Brighton because it was sort of a stockyard and abattoir for cattle. Back in the day when the train sort of went through, and so that might be an interesting opportunity to just do some like public engagement around like designing historical bike racks for
Ooh.
downtown Whitman. So that's public engagement. Historical Commission can be connected to that. You can get grants through, I don't know, Mass Cultural Council
Yes,
and
right.
other places to sort of
Right.
like design them. And so there might be opportunity there to sort of like have that be sort of like a project into itself.
Almost like down in Plymouth, you know how they have the seashells that are all painted, or the lobsters.
The lobsters,
that,
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
DOT did a great program a couple years back too, where they were just basically begging to give these things away, and we couldn't get anyone to apply.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'll ask Charlie to see if that's available anymore,
Sure.
and if that's coming back, because
Yeah.
that would tie in with. Didn't you apply for branding?
Yes.
Yeah, wayfinding and
Yeah,
Yes,
that would
yes,
like
yes,
totally tie
right.
everything in, and
Yep.
it could also be in your master plan if you don't get the funding this round.
Right.
It would at least be identified in a
Yeah.
document for later.
Yep.
So yeah, I think that's a cool, cute idea. Some of them too, when the bike ped guys were doing their public outreach, they would also do, and I don't know what they look like, but very small repair facilities for bikers. Do you remember that?
yeah, they're sort of like self-contained, sort of like bike repair stations. And so Mass Bike has a program where they'll sort of like work with cities, towns to sort of install them, but they're essentially, it looks like a T. So you put your bike on it, and it has like all the tools you need to like a
Get
screwdriver
out of the
and sort
wheel
of,
and
to sort of like repair your bike now.
Yeah.
You have to have, like, if you're replacing a tire, you have to have your tube to put on it.
yeah, right. But yep,
But it's at least a repair station, so if your chain falls off or
Yeah.
something happens,
Right.
you can repair it.
yep.
And the other program that New I used to live in Portsmouth, Rhode Island. When I got there originally, they had the white bikes, and I was like, "What is this white?" And it's the ghost bike.
Oh, the ghost
Ah,
bike.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's just a visual reminder. The kids are on these bikes, you know, be careful. I don't know if you've had instances in town where you've had children or people run over by bikes. Hanson did, or maybe it was a runner, I forget now. But
I was a runner.
remember her, the cancer nurse or something?
I do. That was Winter Street, which is a horrible street to be running on, obviously. But yep, I
People
do
running
know.
in North Abington too.
So I don't know, bringing
that
awareness
needs to be fenced
to
off.
that kind of, maybe not the ghost bike, but I don't know, something.
Right. Yeah.
That timing actually is impeccable because on the Whitman Facebook page, there's a large contingent of younger kids that ride the bikes, and I see them all the time.
Are you talking about the electric bikes?
No,
No, okay.
regular bikes, but
All right.
they're doing wheelies.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And they're doing wheelies right in the middle of the road.
Mhm.
They do really good wheelies, so
Yeah.
I'm impressed by what
but
they
they're
do.
horrifying.
But it's dangerous.
Yeah,
it's
a lot of people
scary.
have brought that up.
Yeah.
Taunton has it horrendous.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We all have similar problems, but
Yeah.
But, the other thing that sort of came out, and it wasn't sort of like highly recommended or mentioned multiple times, but largely by one person, but could be an interesting sort of strategy is traffic gardens. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's vacant lots that are turned into sort of like visually appealing sort of places for like young children specifically to learn to ride their bikes in a safe sort of fashion, so they're not like doing it on the street,
Right.
for example. And so if there was sort of like a vacant lot that really you couldn't do anything else with,
Right.
particularly paved,
Right.
turning it into sort of like a traffic garden.
Yeah, I like that idea too.
I used Whitman Hanson to teach my oldest, and I had a wrench in my hand. He was doing great, but I hit him in the head with a wrench.
Why did you do that?
It was a mistake.
I know. He wasn't.
But
doing-
you're right.
Yeah.
Where do
no.
you teach your kid to ride?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Do you know nowadays, like they do that at school?
Yeah.
School teaches
Oh, really?
the children how to ride bicycles. Yes.
Oh, wow.
In the elementary grades.
Elementary?
Yeah. It's probably because parents are too busy. I hate to say that, but
True, though.
yeah, it is true.
Well,
But schools are.
there's a cute thing they do on the West Coast, and I bring it up to Charlie all the time, and it kind of makes him crazy, but that's what I like to do. They have this thing called Bike Bus. And the
Yes.
kids, you've seen the videos, and
Yes.
the gym teachers drive them to school when they're all on their bikes, and it's all safe. The police
Yep.
block the intersections.
Right.
And once a week for the appropriate seasons, the elementary
That's how they get to school and back. Yeah.
ride their
Right.
bikes and they go
Yeah.
right through the neighborhoods,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
adorable.
Yeah.
But that's West Coast. I don't know if it's doable with our traffic constraints and such in New England.
Right.
But even if it's not going to school, you could have a program one day during the year that
They can
you
do
know,
Yes.
and we can do it around town
Yeah.
and
That would be
have the
cool,
escorts and make sure that it's safe for them. You know,
Yeah.
It's just so cute, and it gets them
that would be really cool.
Yeah.
active
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
biking and the town into it. But
Get kids on their bikes instead of on TikTok.
they have the big speakers,
Yeah.
and the teachers are cool because they get the rock music going.
Yeah, right.
It's just cute videos.
Yep.
Maybe that's something the rec
Yeah,
committee would be
Right.
interested in.
Well, I know on the 4th of July they have a bike parade.
they
That's
do,
a
that's
little
right, yeah.
component
Yeah.
of,
That's
a good one, yeah.
super cute.
So I guess in terms of next steps, what I'll do is maybe turn these two sort of lists into
Into one?
and I'll try to consolidate as I can between all of the goals and strategies so that we have one list that we're working with, so that at our next meeting we can work out sort of filling out the information that we don't have in terms of like the responsible parties. We can work on that, and the timeline. Ideally, I would like to meet before the public meeting in July so that I can use the time to sort of consolidate. I can consolidate. We can meet. We can use that as a working meeting where that's really the only agenda item is sort of like work through the lists. So that I can have a finalized list for the public meeting for them to weigh in on. So over the next, what I'll say is over the next 2 weeks, which I think is what's left in May,
That's it.
if you want to take a look through this list and sort of send me any additional thoughts, feedback you might have regarding any of it, if there's anything's missing, if you would like to suggest maybe consolidations or whatever, send me those by the, how many days are in May? 30th of May, and then in the first week of June, I will work on consolidating that list and then sending it to you all. Now, what is your schedules before July?
I want to ask: is there any
14.
point? So, if your target is October, is there a point at which maybe a monthly meeting is needed in order to meet the timeline versus every 2 months or?
So I think the way that it's set up is that you can engage in this process as much or as little as you want.
It's on
if
you,
we're-
Jason.
If we're on a monthly timeline, it's just like, what are we working on every month? So there could be sort of like, I don't know, monthly chapter review or sort of like feedback, where we sort of like work out chapters in person, where like I send out one chapter a month and we sort of like work on it during the meeting. So it's more of like a working meeting on chapters. That's not required. But if you want to meet monthly, then that's fine.
Or you can send them a shareable document and they can put their comments in the corner and you guys can work on it. And then meet to do a final review too, whatever's easier for everyone.
Yeah, I'm just
Everyone
thinking whatever helps.
Yeah, as of right now,
get everything
I'm on track to
ready.
complete
Okay.
by late October, early November.
Okay.
So June 21st through the 28th, I will be out of state.
All right.
Happily.
Good for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
North or south?
What?
That
North or
June
south or west?
16th week.
Nevada? No.
If you
New Mexico.
Oh, it's so
First,
far.
Colorado.
Week
Then
of 6/16,
Ryan?
no good for Lori.
Nice.
Kathy, what did you say would be out?
the 21st through the 28th of June.
6/21 through 6/28. No, Kathy.
So you're really looking at the second week in June because you're gonna hit July 4th.
Or the week of the 9th,
The week after that.
which is essentially the week before the July meeting. So as long as we have a list that all I need to do is like consolidate and type up, a week is enough.
I'm flexible. I don't care. So whatever is good with other folks.
What's this date for?
For our next steering committee
The next
meeting
meeting.
to work through and finalize
Yeah.
this list.
Yeah. June 9th. Is that what we...
I think he's saying July. You saying July 9th or June 9th?
Oh, sorry.
I'm confused.
I'm looking at the wrong month.
Okay.
So the public meeting is July 17th. So, because you said July 4th. So essentially, we could do the week of July 7th, which would be the week before the public meeting.
Oh,
Or looking at schedules, the week of June 9th is also fine.
either or.
Yep.
I'm
It's the
flexible.
week before the public meeting, so that way if there's anything that you need to help, help us to
Facilitate
Yeah.
that.
facilitate. Yeah.
It's
Fresh
good to
in our minds.
regroup before those type of things.
So July 7th, is that what we're?
Should try to hold
July-
it here.
July 9th
Get
on
more
Wednesday?
people to show up.
July 9th is a Wednesday, so if we want to keep with our
Wednesday.
July
Wednesday
9th.
schedule.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Our next
is there, so you had mentioned you were going to produce some materials for that public meeting. Do you want review from us at all?
The materials for that public meeting are largely going to be sort of the finalized list in a format that people can sort of like provide feedback on.
Okay,
So
perfect.
that's
Okay.
easy enough.
Easy enough.
All right, so then I think the next thing is Whitman Day. I'll see you there.
Okay.
And I think for that, all
I
I
would
need to do
definitely
is
be
like
there.
have maybe each of the 9 goals or however many goals we have with the strategy, so that people can do sort of like open house style, go around, sort of like
Oh.
look at them and place like sticky dots on ones that they like.
Oh,
Maybe
like a
prioritize
station.
them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Do it in more of a station format to make it more engaging rather than sort of lecture style.
Sure.
We'll have sticky notes for them to write long comments.
Yeah.
And a map of town.
Being doing community organizing for close to 20 years, I have my own organizing toolkit that has all the note cards and sticky notes and
Nice.
stuff. So
It's got a cute
Nice.
little backpack.
don't have to use any of OCPC's or time resources for that.
Good.
No, just Jason resources.
Also, I don't know if anyone's ever used Poll Everywhere, but I'm looking at using it for our regional housing strategy summit. It's an engaging sort of system where you can sort of like use your smartphone or laptop to sort of like vote on things. So there's polls, there's word clouds you can generate through it, and so
I have
put
seen
in
that,
this number and type in or text to this number sort of like your thoughts on open space and women, and people will say whatever,
Yeah.
and the more words sort of get put in around the similar, it gets bigger.
Yeah. Right.
And so maybe trying to utilize some of that. in some way
Right.
too,
Yep. It's
just
cool.
to make it
Way
more
better than
engaging.
my Post-it.
It's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I do the post-its too, but that can be for something else. All right, so you're all homework. Kathy, not time sensitive, but if you want to do the write up for Camp Alice Carlton,
I will.
sort of like
Yep.
what that looks like, so I can
Yep.
just put that into section
Yep.
4 as I'm updating with the climate change chapter or section, and then everyone else review goals, objectives, and send me any feedback by the end of May.
Yeah.
We will convene as a group on July 9th to sort of work on the goals and objectives and finalize that list. And I will potentially have another chapter or 2 for you to review in the interim. And we have 2 more Wednesday walks coming up. So if you're able to join those, feel free. If not, no worries. I will get the ticks and mosquitoes for everyone.
Okay. Meeting's adjourning at 7:30. It's perfect.
Perfect time.
Yes.
I'm gonna run to